The day she married a billionaire was meant to be perfect, until everything changed. Hello everyone. Before we begin today's story, I have a small favor to ask. Please hit subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you never miss our channel's new videos. It is quick, free, and the best way to support us in bringing you more dramatic stories. Your support truly means the world to us. Where are you watching from today? Drop your city or country in the comments below. Thank you very much. Now, let us return to the main character. It was supposed to be the happiest day of her life. The kind of day little girls imagine before they even understand what marriage means. White roses lined the aisle. Soft music floated through the air. Crystal chandeliers shimmered above hundreds of perfectly dressed guests, all holding champagne glasses that cost more than her monthly rent once did. She stood at the altar in a custom wedding gown, worth more than she had earned in her entire life. And yet, her hands were shaking. Her name was Emily Carter, and just 24 hours earlier, she had still been sleeping in a small one-bedroom apartment on the edge of the city, counting every dollar, measuring groceries, worrying about overdue bills. Now, she was marrying Daniel Whitmore, a billionaire. The cameras loved him. The business magazines called him ruthless, brilliant, untouchable. At 35 years old, Daniel Whitmore had built an empire in real estate and private equity that stretched across the country. His name alone carried weight. His presence could silence a room. Standing beside him, Emily felt like she had stepped into someone else's life. Daniel looked flawless in his tailored black suit, calm, controlled. His expression never changed, not when the guests stood, not when the music swelled, not even when Emily reached his side. He did not squeeze her hand. He did not lean closer. He simply nodded once, as if confirming a business decision. Emily told herself that was normal. This was not a love story, not yet. She had known that from the beginning. As the officiant began speaking, Emily's eyes drifted over the crowd. Powerful men, elegant women, investors, board members, people who looked at her with polite smiles that never quite reached their eyes. She could almost hear their thoughts. Who is she? Where did she come from? How did someone like her end up here? Emily swallowed and lifted her chin. She reminded herself why she was standing there. 6 weeks ago, her life had been falling apart. Her mother's medical bills had reached numbers she could not comprehend. The bank had sent final notices. The apartment she shared with her mother was days away from foreclosure. Then, Daniel Whitmore had walked into her life with a proposal that did not sound real. A contract marriage. 1 year, clear boundaries, no romance, no expectations. In exchange, every problem she had would disappear. At the time, she had told herself it was temporary, a sacrifice, 1 year of her life to save everything else. The officiant's voice faded into the background as Emily's thoughts raced. This is just the beginning, she reminded herself. Just 1 year, just a role to play. When the words, "Do you take him?" reached her ears, she answered softly but clearly, "I do." Daniel answered the same way. No hesitation, no emotion. The rings were exchanged. The applause erupted. Cameras flashed like lightning. And in that moment, as the room rose to its feet, Emily forced a smile and told herself that she had won. She was safe now. Her mother was safe. Her future was secure. But as Daniel leaned closer, his voice low enough that only she could hear, he said something that made her heart sink. "After tonight," he said quietly, "we will discuss the rules again. You should be very clear on what this marriage is and what it is not." Emily's smile froze. The music swelled. The guests cheered louder. From the outside, it looked perfect. But inside, something shifted. Because in that single sentence, Emily realized something she had not allowed herself to think before. This wedding was not the ending of her problems. It was only the beginning. And nothing in the billionaire world she had just married into was going to be as beautiful as it looked from the outside. The reception ended exactly as it had begun. Perfect, polished, controlled. Emily stood beside Daniel as guests congratulated them one by one, their smiles wide, their words carefully chosen. Beautiful ceremony. A powerful match. You make a stunning couple. No one asked how she felt. Daniel's hand rested lightly on her lower back, never squeezing, never pulling her closer. It was a gesture meant for cameras, not comfort. Each time a photographer raised a lens, his posture shifted just enough to look attentive, devoted. As soon as the final guest left, the warmth vanished. The car ride to the estate was silent. The city lights slid past the tinted windows, distant and unreal. Emily stared straight ahead, still in her wedding gown, the weight of the day settling into her bones. Daniel checked his phone once, then looked out the window. When the car finally stopped, Emily expected a home. Instead, she felt like she had arrived at a corporate headquarters. The Whitmore estate rose behind iron gates, massive and immaculate. Security lights lined the driveway. Everything was perfectly trimmed, perfectly placed, perfectly cold. Inside, the house was quiet. Too quiet. A house manager greeted them, voice formal, eyes assessing. "Your rooms are prepared." Rooms, not room. Emily noticed the word immediately, but she did not speak. They walked through long hallways with marble floors and walls covered in abstract art she did not recognize. Every step echoed. The house did not feel lived in. It felt owned. At the top of the stairs, the manager stopped. "Mrs. Whitmore," he said, turning to Emily. "Your suite is to the east wing. Mr. Whitmore's is on the opposite side." Emily froze for half a second. Daniel spoke before she could. "That will be all." The man nodded and left. The silence returned. Emily turned slowly toward Daniel. Separate rooms? Daniel adjusted his cufflinks, calm and deliberate. That was outlined in the agreement. She nodded, even though her chest felt tight. "I thought it might be different, at least tonight." "Tonight does not change the structure," he replied. "It is important we maintain clarity." He gestured toward a nearby door. "There is something we should review." Inside the room was a small sitting area with a glass table. A folder lay neatly at the center, already opened. Emily recognized it instantly. The contract. She sat across from him, carefully smoothing her dress beneath her. Daniel remained standing. "I want to be very clear," he said. "This marriage exists for one purpose: public perception, stability, control." He slid the folder closer to her. "The boundaries are non-negotiable." Emily scanned the page. Her eyes moved faster with every line. No public interviews without approval. No independent statements to the press. No involvement in company affairs. No changes to her name without consent. No personal disclosures. And then she saw it. A clause highlighted in yellow. Emily's breath caught. "This was not explained." Daniel's voice remained even. "It was included. You never said I would not be allowed to appear with you unless required." "That is correct." She looked up at him, disbelief creeping into her expression. "So I am your wife only when it is convenient. You are my wife when it is strategic." The words landed harder than she expected. Emily closed the folder slowly. "And if I do not agree?" Daniel met her gaze without flinching. "Then this arrangement ends, and so does the protection it provides." He did not raise his voice. He did not threaten her. He did not need to. Emily thought of her mother, the hospital room, the bills stacked on the kitchen table, the fear she had tried so hard to bury. She nodded once. "I understand." Daniel exhaled, satisfied. "Good. Tomorrow we begin appearances. You will meet my family." Family. The word did not sound comforting. As he turned to leave, Emily spoke quietly. "Daniel." He paused. "Do you ever plan to treat me like your wife?" He looked at her, his expression unreadable. "That depends on whether you remember why you are here." The door closed behind him. Emily sat alone in the silent room, still wearing her wedding dress, staring at the contract that now defined her life. The fairy tale was over, and she had never felt more alone. Morning came too quickly. Emily woke to unfamiliar silence, the kind that felt heavy instead of peaceful. The bed beneath her was massive, the sheets crisp and untouched, as if no one had ever truly slept there before. For a brief moment, she forgot where she was. Then she saw the view. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooked acres of manicured land, fountains already running, staff moving with quiet precision far below. This was not a home struggling to stay afloat. This was wealth that never worried about tomorrow. Emily sat up slowly, her wedding dress gone, replaced by a silk robe laid out neatly at the foot of the bed. Someone had been in the room while she slept. A soft knock sounded at the door. "Mrs. Whitmore?" a woman's voice said politely. "Your stylist will arrive in 20 minutes. "Stylist?" Emily hesitated. "For what?" "For breakfast with the Whitmore family." Her stomach tightened. Downstairs, the dining room looked like something from a magazine. Long table, perfect place settings, fresh flowers replaced daily. Daniel sat at the head, already dressed, already focused, already composed. He barely looked up when Emily entered. His mother did. Margaret Whitmore's gaze moved over Emily slowly, deliberately, as if evaluating an investment she did not request. She smiled, but it did not reach her eyes. "So this is her," Margaret said, "Daniel's wife." Emily straightened her posture. "Good morning, Mrs. Whitmore." Margaret inclined her head. "Call me Margaret. Mrs. Whitmore feels excessive." Daniel's father said nothing. His sister glanced at Emily, then at her phone. The meal was polite, cold, controlled. Questions came carefully wrapped in courtesy. "Where did you grow up? What does your family do? How did you meet Daniel?" Emily answered honestly, but briefly, choosing her words with care. She felt like she was on trial without knowing the charges. At one point, Margaret set down her fork and smiled again. "You must feel very lucky," she said. "Daniel is a difficult man to please." Emily nodded. "I do my best." Margaret's smile sharpened. "I am sure you will. Appearances matter." Daniel said nothing. After breakfast, Emily followed him into a private study. The door closed softly behind them. "You did well," Daniel said. "My mother values discretion." Emily looked at him. "She does not think I belong here." "That is not your concern." "But it is," Emily replied quietly. "I am your wife." Daniel paused, then spoke without emotion. "You are part of a structure, not the foundation." The words stung more than she expected. Later that day, she was introduced to staff, schedules, rules, where she could go, where she should not, which doors were not meant for her. Everything was organized, everything was efficient, and nothing was warm. By evening, Emily stood alone on the balcony of her suite, watching the sun sink behind the estate. She thought of her old apartment, the noise, the cramped space, the life that had been difficult, but hers. She had traded that life for safety, but safety, she was learning, came with a price. Downstairs, she heard voices, laughter that was not meant for her, a world moving forward without her participation. Emily rested her hands on the railing and whispered to herself, 1 year. She did not know yet that this was only the beginning of being tested, and that soon she would be forced to decide how much of herself she was willing to lose to survive in the billionaire world she had married into. The first public test came sooner than Emily expected. 3 days after the wedding, Daniel informed her of a charity gala hosted by the Whitmore Foundation. It would be her first official appearance as his wife. "You will attend," he said that morning, adjusting his tie in front of the mirror. "You will smile. You will say very little." Emily nodded. "And if someone speaks to me?" "Respond politely. Do not volunteer information." She hesitated. "Daniel, I have never been to something like this." He met her eyes in the mirror. "Then observe. That is usually enough." That night, the ballroom glowed with gold and crystal. Chandeliers reflected off marble floors. A string quartet played softly in the corner, while servers moved like clockwork, carrying champagne flutes and silver trays. Emily stepped inside on Daniel's arm, her heart beat loud in her ears. Every head turned. She felt it immediately. The curiosity, the judgment, the quiet calculations behind perfectly practiced smiles. This was not admiration. This was inspection. Daniel paused as photographers called his name. He placed a hand lightly at Emily's waist, just enough to signal ownership. The flashes erupted. "How does it feel to be newly married, Mr. Whitmore?" Daniel smiled. "Marriage brings stability." No mention of her. Inside the ballroom, conversations parted as they passed. Some guests greeted Daniel warmly, others with forced politeness. When they looked at Emily, their expressions shifted. "So, you are the bride," a woman in an emerald dress said, her tone sweet but sharp. "You must be very adaptable." Emily smiled. "I try to be." The woman laughed softly. "That will be necessary." As the evening continued, Emily noticed how often Daniel was pulled away. Investors, board members, influential donors. She was left standing beside him, then behind him, then alone. At one point, Margaret Whitmore approached with a group of women. "Emily," she said smoothly, "why do not you join us?" Emily followed, hopeful. The conversation turned quickly. "You have such a delicate look," one woman remarked. "What field were you in before marriage?" "I worked in nonprofit administration," Emily answered. Margaret raised an eyebrow. "How quaint." The others smiled. Another woman leaned closer. "You must feel overwhelmed. This world can be demanding." Emily held her composure. "I am learning." Margaret tilted her head. "Learning is important, especially when one marries above their station." The words were soft. The message was not. Emily felt heat rise to her cheeks, but she did not look away. "I married Daniel because we made a mutual decision." Margaret's smile thinned. "Of course. Decisions." Across the room, Daniel watched briefly, then turned back to his conversation. Emily realized then that this was intentional. She was meant to endure this alone. Later, as the crowd gathered near the stage, a donor made an offhand remark into a microphone. "It is inspiring to see the Whitmore legacy continue, and congratulations to Daniel on acquiring such a charming addition." Laughter rippled through the room. Emily froze. Daniel did not react. He did not interrupt. He did not correct them. He did not look at her. In that moment, something inside Emily shifted. She understood the rules now. She was not a partner. She was not an equal. She was a symbol, a calculated move. The applause swelled, but Emily barely heard it. When the evening finally ended, the drive home was silent again. As the estate gates closed behind them, Emily spoke. "You let them humiliate me." Daniel kept his eyes forward. "You handled it." "That was not the agreement," she said quietly. "The agreement did not include protection from opinions," he replied. Emily looked at him then, really looked at him. "I did not marry you to be invisible." Daniel's jaw tightened. "You married me to solve your problems." The words cut deeper than anything said that night. Emily turned toward the window, blinking back tears she refused to let fall. She realized something important as the estate came into view. If she stayed silent much longer, she would disappear completely. And for the first time since the wedding, Emily began to wonder whether the cost of this marriage was higher than she had ever imagined. Life inside the Whitmore estate settled into a routine that felt more like containment than comfort. Days passed measured by schedules Emily did not create and rules she did not write. Breakfast was served at the same time each morning. Staff spoke politely, but kept their distance. Doors opened only where she was permitted to go. Daniel was almost never there. When he was, he moved through the house like a guest with permanent access, focused, efficient, always on the phone, always somewhere else. They ate dinner together twice that week. Both times the table felt longer than it looked. "How was your day?" Emily asked once, more out of habit than hope. "Productive," Daniel replied, glancing at his tablet. She waited for more. Nothing came. Emily began to understand the quiet cruelty of being ignored. The tabloids noticed her before she noticed them. A headline appeared online one morning while she was scrolling aimlessly on her phone. "Whitmore's mystery bride. Who is she, really?" The article dissected her background with surgical precision. Her education, her former income, her mother's illness, things she had never shared publicly. Comments followed. "She is clearly after money. She will not last. Another temporary accessory." Emily set the phone down, her hands trembling. That evening, she found Margaret Whitmore waiting in the sitting room. Margaret did not invite her to sit. "You should be careful," Margaret said calmly. "Your past invites unnecessary attention." Emily met her gaze. "I have done nothing wrong." Margaret smiled faintly. "Wrong is subjective. Reputation is not." She gestured toward the tablet on the table, the article visible on the screen. "This family does not tolerate weakness." Emily took a slow breath. "Then perhaps this family should not have asked me to marry into it." Margaret's eyes hardened. "You were chosen because you were manageable. Do not forget that." The words lingered long after Margaret left. That night, Emily stood in front of the mirror in her suite, studying the woman she barely recognized. The clothes were expensive. The jewelry was flawless. She felt smaller than ever. She began declining invitations she was not required to attend. She stopped asking Daniel questions that went unanswered. She learned to move quietly through the house, to take up less space. One afternoon, she overheard two staff members whispering as she passed. "She is temporary," one said. "They always are," the other replied. Emily did not confront them. She went back to her room and closed the door. That was when the loneliness became unbearable. She missed noise. She missed mistakes. She missed being seen. Late one night, unable to sleep, Emily wandered into the estate library. Rows of books stretched from floor to ceiling. She ran her fingers along the spines, grounding herself in something real. She found an old ledger tucked between two volumes. Curiosity pulled her in. It was a record of foundation donations, names, amounts, causes. Emily noticed inconsistencies, large sums redirected, approved under Daniel's signature during periods when she knew he had been out of the country. Her heart began to race. She was not looking for trouble, but trouble was already there. The next morning, she mentioned it casually to Daniel at breakfast. "I was reading about the foundation," she said carefully. "Some of the allocations seem unusual." Daniel's fork paused mid-air. "That is not your concern," he said. "I know," Emily replied, "but it affects your public image, ours." He looked at her then, irritation flashing briefly across his face. "Do not involve yourself in matters you do not understand." The dismissal stung, but something else rose beneath it. Resolve. Emily realized she had been shrinking to survive, and it was killing her. That night she stood once again on her balcony, the city lights flickering in the distance. She thought of the woman she had been before this marriage, the woman who fought for her mother, the woman who did not stay silent when something felt wrong. She whispered into the quiet, "I cannot disappear." The billionaire world had taken her name, her space, her voice, but it had not taken her will, not yet. And soon, Emily would be forced to choose between remaining invisible or reclaiming herself, no matter the cost. The test came disguised as an invitation. Emily found it waiting on the breakfast table one morning, printed on heavy cream paper with the Whitmore crest embossed at the top. Emergency board session. Attendance required. She read it twice. Daniel was already gone. A house assistant confirmed it quietly. "Mr. Whitmore asked that you attend as his wife. The press will be present." Emily understood immediately. This was not a request. This was a stage. The boardroom sat at the top floor of Whitmore Holdings, glass walls overlooking the city Daniel claimed as his own. Cameras crowded the hallway outside. Reporters murmured, waiting. When Emily entered, conversation paused. Men in dark suits turned to look at her. Some curious, some amused, some openly dismissive. Daniel sat at the head of the table, composed as ever. "You are late," he said evenly. "I came as soon as I was informed," Emily replied. The meeting began without ceremony. A board member cleared his throat. "We are here to address irregularities within the Whitmore Foundation. Allegations of misallocated funds have reached the media." Emily felt the room tighten. Daniel spoke calmly. "The issue is being handled internally." Another board member glanced toward Emily. "Given the current scrutiny, we believe it would be wise for Mrs. Whitmore to sign a statement of non-involvement." A document slid across the table toward her. Emily picked it up. It was a non-disclosure agreement. She scanned the page quickly. It required her to deny any knowledge of the foundation, past or present, and relinquish the right to speak publicly in the future. Her chest tightened. "This would protect the family," Margaret Whitmore said from across the room. "And you?" Emily looked up. "From what?" "From becoming collateral," Margaret replied. Emily turned to Daniel. "You want me to sign this?" "It is procedural," he said. "Nothing more." She stared at him, searching his face for something human. "Daniel," she said quietly, "this says I'm not allowed to speak the truth if asked." "There is no truth you need to speak," he replied. Emily felt the weight of every moment leading to this one. The gala, the humiliation, the silence, the rules. She set the document down. "I will not sign this." The room went still. Daniel's expression hardened. "This is not the time." "This is exactly the time," Emily said. A board member scoffed. "With all due respect, Mrs. Whitmore, you are not qualified to weigh in." Emily stood. "I did not ask to be qualified," she said. "I was brought here to be visible, and now that visibility is inconvenient." Daniel stood as well. "Sit down." Emily met his gaze. "No." Her voice did not shake. "I entered this marriage under an agreement," she continued. "That agreement did not include being used as a shield." Margaret's tone sharpened. "You are overstepping." Emily turned to her. "I have been stepping back since the day I arrived. This ends now." The cameras outside caught movement through the glass. Reporters leaned closer. Emily took a breath. If there are issues within the foundation, they should be addressed openly, not buried. Daniel lowered his voice. "You are making a mistake." "Then it will be mine," she replied. She picked up her bag. "I will not lie for this family, and I will not disappear to make you comfortable." The room erupted in murmurs. Emily walked out. The doors closed behind her, but the sound followed her into the hallway, where cameras immediately turned. "Mrs. Whitmore," a reporter called out. "Do you have a statement?" Emily paused. For the first time since the wedding, she felt steady. "I believe accountability matters," she said, "even when it is difficult." She walked away without another word. That night, Emily packed a single suitcase. She did not know what would happen next, but she knew one thing with absolute clarity. She had crossed a line she could never uncross, and somewhere behind her, Daniel Whitmore was finally realizing that the woman he thought he could control had just chosen herself instead. The house felt different when Daniel returned that night. Not quieter, heavier. Emily was gone. Her suitcase was missing from the guest wing. The balcony doors were open, curtains moving slightly in the night air. For the first time since the wedding, the Whitmore estate felt unsettled. Daniel stood in the doorway of her suite longer than he meant to. The room was untouched, perfectly arranged, no signs of chaos, just absence. He told himself this was temporary, a reaction, a tactic. Emily would come back once she understood the consequences. That was what logic said. But logic had failed him all day. The board meeting replayed in his mind against his will. The way she stood, the way her voice did not shake, the way the room had gone silent when she refused to sign. No one had ever said no to him like that. Not investors, not family, not employees, and certainly not someone who needed him. Daniel poured himself a drink and did not finish it. By morning, the news cycle had already shifted. Headlines spread quickly. Whitmore Foundation under scrutiny. Billionaire's wife refuses to sign NDA at board meeting. Daniel watched the footage once. Emily's face on the screen was calm, controlled, honest. She had not tried to destroy him. She had simply refused to protect him. Margaret found him in his office shortly after. "She embarrassed this family," she said sharply. Daniel did not respond. "She needs to be reminded of her place." Daniel finally looked up. "Her place?" Margaret crossed her arms. "You gave her everything. She owes you loyalty." Something twisted in his chest. "She did not ask for this," he said. Margaret stared at him. "Do not be foolish. You chose her because she was grateful." Daniel stood. "I chose her because she was capable." Margaret scoffed. "She is replaceable." The word echoed longer than it should have. That afternoon, Daniel did something he had not done in years. He reviewed the foundation records himself, not summaries, not reports, the original transfers. Emily had been right. Funds had been redirected, approved under his authority during overseas travel. The signatures were his, but the decisions were not. A name appeared repeatedly in the authorization chain. His uncle, a board member, a man he trusted. Daniel felt something crack. The anger came first, sharp, focused, then guilt. Emily had seen it. She had tried to warn him, and he had silenced her. Daniel closed the file and leaned back in his chair, staring at the ceiling. For the first time, the contract marriage felt irrelevant. This was not about control. This was about character. That evening, Daniel went to the one place he had not expected to find her, the small apartment near the hospital. Emily opened the door slowly. She looked tired but steady. "I am not here to argue," Daniel said. She studied him. "Then why are you here?" "Because you were right." The words felt unfamiliar, necessary. "I should have listened," he continued. "I did not protect you, and I was wrong." Emily did not soften. "I did not leave to be apologized to," she said. "I know," Daniel replied. "You left because you could not stay invisible." Silence stretched between them. I am handling the foundation issue, he said, publicly. Emily searched his face. And the contract? Daniel took a breath. It no longer matters to me. That was the moment something shifted. Not forgiveness, not reconciliation, recognition. Emily nodded once. Then handle it. She closed the door gently. Daniel stood there longer than he should have. For the first time, he understood the truth. He had not married a woman who needed saving. He had married a woman who would never disappear for his convenience. And if he wanted her back, it would not be through power, contracts, or control. It would have to be through choice, real choice. The press conference was scheduled for noon. By 10 o'clock, every major network was already camped outside Whitmore Holdings. Cameras lined the sidewalk. Reporters rehearsed questions they had been waiting years to ask. Inside the building, Daniel stood alone in the executive conference room, staring at the city below. The board had tried to stop him. His uncle had called twice. Lawyers had warned him about exposure, about losses, about reputation. For the first time, Daniel did not calculate risk. He chose truth. When he stepped onto the stage, the room exploded with sound. "Mr. Whitmore, is it true funds were misallocated? Was your wife involved? Is your marriage in trouble?" Daniel raised a hand. Silence followed. "My name is Daniel Whitmore," he began, "and today I am taking responsibility." The words landed hard. He explained everything: the internal audit, the forged authorizations, the abuse of trust within his own family. He named his uncle. He announced his resignation as chairman of the foundation, effective immediately, pending investigation. Gasps rippled through the room. Then came the question he expected. Why now? Daniel did not hesitate. "Because someone reminded me that integrity does not belong to institutions," he said. "It belongs to people." Across town, Emily watched from a small television in the hospital waiting room. Her mother slept peacefully beside her, unaware of the storm unfolding. When Daniel mentioned accountability, Emily closed her eyes. When he announced the restructuring, she felt a quiet ache in her chest. When a reporter finally asked about her, she leaned forward. "Mrs. Whitmore," the reporter said, "did your wife influence this decision?" Daniel looked directly into the camera. "She refused to lie," he said. That was enough. Emily exhaled slowly. By the end of the day, the story had shifted. Not scandal, not collapse. Reckoning. That evening, Daniel returned to the estate alone. He gathered the board members and staff in the main hall. "The foundation will be rebuilt," he said. "Transparency is no longer optional. Anyone who cannot support that is free to leave." Some did, others stayed. Then Daniel did something no one expected. He called Emily. "I am filing the paperwork," he said when she answered. "The contract marriage is over." She was silent. "I am not asking you to return," he continued. "I am asking you to be free to choose." Emily closed her eyes. "And what about the family?" she asked. "They no longer decide for me," Daniel replied. The next morning, Emily returned to the estate for the first time since she left. Not as a wife, as herself. Daniel met her in the main hall. No suit, no entourage, just a man standing in the space he once controlled. On the table between them lay the contract. Daniel slid it toward her. "I built my life on leverage," he said. "I will not use it on you again." Emily picked it up. She read the first page, then the last. She tore it cleanly in half, then again. The sound echoed. Emily placed the pieces down gently. "That does not erase what happened." "I know," Daniel said. "I am not asking it to." She looked at him. "You protected the truth, not me." Daniel nodded. "That was the first thing I had to learn." Silence settled between them. Not tense, not cold, honest. Emily took a breath. "I am not ready to forgive." "I am not asking for forgiveness," Daniel replied. "Only the chance to earn it." Emily considered him carefully. For the first time, she did not see a billionaire. She saw a man who had lost control and chosen character instead. She picked up her bag. "I am leaving," she said. Daniel's chest tightened. "I understand," and she paused at the doorway. "If there is anything real between us, it will not survive power." Then she walked out. Daniel watched her go, knowing the truth at last. This time, love would not be negotiated. It would be chosen. Or not at all. 3 months passed. The world moved on quickly, as it always did. Another scandal replaced the last. Another headline took its place. Whitmore Holdings stabilized under new leadership, and the foundation began rebuilding with independent oversight. Daniel stepped back from public life. For the first time since his 20s, his calendar was not full. He spent his mornings reviewing reports alone. His evenings were quiet. The estate felt less like a fortress now, and more like an empty shell. And for the first time, the silence did not feel like control. It felt like consequence. Emily rebuilt her life slowly. She stayed close to the hospital, helping her mother through recovery. She returned to nonprofit work, quietly consulting for organizations that valued transparency. She rented a small apartment again, modest but hers. No security gates, no cameras, no contracts. Occasionally, she saw Daniel's name in the news. He never reached out again. Until one afternoon, when she received a handwritten envelope. No logo, no letterhead, just her name. Inside was a single card. "I will be at the old pier at sunset tomorrow. If you choose to come, I will be there. If not, I will understand." No pressure, no promise, just choice. The next evening, Emily stood at the edge of the pier, the ocean stretching endlessly before her. The air smelled of salt and wood. Seagulls cried overhead. Daniel stood several feet away, hands in his pockets. He did not step closer. "You came," he said softly. "I wanted to," Emily replied. They walked side by side, not touching. "I resigned from the board entirely," Daniel said. "I kept my shares, but I no longer run the company." Emily looked at him. "Why?" "Because I needed to know who I was without power," he answered. "And because if I ever stood beside you again, I wanted it to be as an equal." Emily stopped walking. "You hurt me," she said calmly. "You let people erase me." Daniel nodded. "I know. I do not need grand gestures," she continued. "I need honesty, even when it costs you." Daniel met her eyes. "Then let it cost me." Silence stretched between them, filled only by waves. Emily took a breath. "I do not know if I can forgive everything." "I am not asking you to," Daniel said. "I am asking you to choose what you want now." She studied him carefully. No suit, no entourage, no control, just a man waiting. Emily reached into her pocket and pulled out a folded piece of paper. It was the copy of the contract she had kept. She unfolded it once, then let it slip from her fingers into the wind. The paper disappeared over the water. "That marriage is over," she said, "completely." Daniel nodded. "I know." Emily stepped closer. "If there is anything between us," she said, "it starts today. Without titles, without leverage, without guarantees." Daniel's voice was steady. "That is the only way I want it." She held his gaze for a long moment. Then she smiled. Not a practiced smile. Not a careful one. A real one. Emily reached for his hand. Daniel did not pull her closer. He simply held it. As the sun dipped below the horizon, they stood together, not as a billionaire and his wife, not as a contract and its consequences, but as two people choosing each other freely. This time, there were no witnesses, no cameras, no applause, just a quiet understanding. The day she married a billionaire was meant to be perfect. But this moment, imperfect and honest, was something far better. It was real.